President Trump, who attended Fordham, a Jesuit university, came face to face today with the first Jesuit pope. The rest is history, witnessed by Major Garrett.
President Trump spent 30 minutes with Pope Francis at the Vatican and introduced him to First Lady Melania and daughter Ivanka. On Twitter, the president called it an honor of a lifetime that renewed his commitment to peace.
He is something. He is really great. We had a fantastic meeting and we had a fantastic tour. It was really beautiful.
It was not always so.
He said negative things about me.
The two clashed during the 2016 Republican primary. The Pope criticized candidate Trump's call for a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, saying those who think only about building walls are, quote, not Christian.
For a religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful.
The White House said at today's meeting the president and Pope Francis discussed terrorism, human rights, and religious freedom. They also exchanged gifts. Mr. Trump gave the Pope a sculpture and a set of books by Martin Luther King Jr. His Holiness gave the president a signed copy of his 2015 encyclical on protecting the environment.
They may not always have seen eye to eye, but now the US president and Pope Francis have met face to face. A cordial handshake for the cameras was followed by a private audience between Donald Trump and the pontiff. It could have made for an interesting discussion as the pair have clashed over several issues in the past, including migration, rampant capitalism, and global warming. Trump was accompanied by his wife Melania and daughter Ivanka, dressed in black in keeping with Vatican protocol that is no longer always observed by visiting female dignitaries. The meeting comes midway through the US leader's first foreign trip, which has seen him travel to Saudi Arabia, Israel and the Palestinian territories. Later on Wednesday, he will travel to Brussels to meet with EU and NATO officials. Another meeting which promises to be tense, given his criticism of the international bodies in the past.
The visit of President Donald Trump to the Vatican to meet with Pope Francis was part of his first overseas trip as Commander-in-Chief, with a full itinerary of stops throughout the Middle East and Europe. His trip began Friday with a stop in Saudi Arabia to speak to Muslim leaders, followed by visits to Israel and the Vatican. Trump is attending the 28th NATO summit in Brussels, Belgium, and will later attend the 43rd G7 summit. The president's travel comes on the heels of a number of highly publicized controversies, including the recent firing of FBI Director James Comey amid the ongoing Russia investigation. Recent world events such as the Syrian war, ISIS and Islamic terror attacks, Brexit, North Korea, the LGBT agenda, and the immigrant and refugee crisis, etc., have prophecy watchers and would-be prophecy teachers all aflutter. While I do believe these events play a role in God's great plan, it's not my method to try to interpret every daily news headline as the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. I don't believe that is what God has called me to do. So I will leave that happy hunting ground to all the self-proclaimed prophets, prophetesses, and prophecy experts. I do believe this meeting of the Jesuit-educated President Donald Trump with Jesuit Pope Francis to be the most significant in terms of Bible prophecy. It is especially so in light of Trump's vow to white evangelical Christians to close the gap and remove the wall between church and state. Also, VP Mike Pence, a self-described evangelical Catholic, and Paul Ryan, the Roman Catholic Speaker of the House. Catholicism seems to totally inform Ryan's worldview and, most notably, his political stances. He once said, "A person's faith is central to how they conduct themselves in public and in private." Ryan uses his religion and his adherence to it like political currency, often asserting it to widen the perceived divide between him and what some view as the more secular Democrats, with which he sees himself as diametrically opposed. There is also the Catholic majority Supreme Court. All branches of the U.S. government are under significant Jesuit and Catholic influence. Revelation 13 sheds light on these developments and what they portend, as well as their final dispensation. Chapter 13 explains in great detail two organizations, or systems, that Satan will especially use in his final attempt to destroy God's remnant and thus frustrate his eternal purpose. Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 10. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power is given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. As John stood on the beach of the island of Patmos, he saw a startling sight. Rising up before him out of the sea came a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast had the body of a leopard, the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion. These symbols are based on Daniel 7, which depicted the future in terms of 4 great powers that were to dominate history. In his vision, Daniel saw first a lion, symbolizing Babylon, then a bear, Medo-Persia, then a leopard, Greece, and finally a dreadful and terrible beast, Rome. According to his vision, the 4th empire, Rome, would come to be dominated in its final stage by a little horn, a terrible power that would persecute God's people for a time, 2 times, and half a time. John's prophecy is nearly identical with the description of the little horn in Daniel 7, and it unquestionably points to the time when the apostate papal church system of the Middle Ages began to dominate the state. Paul, looking forward to the time when this falling away from the truth would arise, referred to this power as the man of sin, the mystery of iniquity. See Daniel chapter 7 verse 8, verse 25, chapter 8 verses 23 to 25, chapter 11 verse 36, and 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 3 and 4. The book of Revelation elsewhere shows that there are many sincere individuals in the Roman Catholic organization. See Revelation chapter 14 verse 7, chapter 18 verse 4. God does not condemn such ones. Rather, it is the system to which God objects, the mingling of church and state, or as Revelation 17:1 shows, the prostitution of the church to the state. In chapter 17 verse 5, John called this apostate Christian body the mother of harlots. Apparently, in the end times, the problem won't be limited to one institution. However pure its origin, any cult, sect, or church that attempts to force its understanding of Christianity on other people comes under God's condemnation. Notice how these verses describe 4 phases through which the leopard-like beast must go. First, it would emerge from the sea, a symbol of heavily populated areas. See Revelation chapter 17 verse 1, verse 15, confers Daniel chapter 7 verse 3. And receive from the dragon, Satan, 1, his power, 2, his seat or throne, and 3, great authority. Verse 2. Second, it would rule for 42 prophetic months, or 1260 years, a period that began AD 538, verses 2 and 5. During this 1260 years, the beast would blaspheme God, his name, or character, his tabernacle, or temple in heaven, and those who dwell in heaven. Just as both Daniel and John predicted, the papal church state system effectively cast down the truth of Jesus' continual intercession for his people by focusing the attention of the people on human priests and their mediation. See Daniel chapter 8 verses 11 and 12, chapter 11 verse 31. It exalted man, sinful man, in the place of Jesus. Third, after the 42 months, one of his heads would receive a deadly wound. In 1798, exactly 1260 years after the Pope became free to exercise his supremacy over the state, the French general Berthier brought to a climax the blow that the Reformation had given to the papacy by entering Rome and taking the Pope captive. As John so clearly prophesied, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Fourth, according to verses 3 and 4, the beast will be resurrected shortly before Jesus' second coming. Confer Revelation chapter 17 verses 12 through 14. For a short period it will repeat its past history by prostituting itself to the kings of the earth and persecuting God's people. Then only those who have accepted the ministry of Jesus for them in the heavenly sanctuary will escape its bewitching influence. See verses 15 and 16. The 7 heads of the beast represent the kingdoms or powers through which Satan has worked to fight against God and his people. Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, Papal Rome, Atheism, and the United States. The 10 horns represent the 10 kingdoms of Western Europe, into which the Western Roman Empire was divided after its downfall. Revelation chapter 13 verses 11 through 18. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth, and they which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had the power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Following his vision of the beast from the sea, John saw another animal, this one coming up out of the earth. Later passages in the book of Revelation describe this beast as a false prophet, a highly successful impostor. See Revelation chapter 16 verse 13 and 14, chapter 19 verse 20. At least 4 points identify this beast. 1. Time of rise. The beast from the earth must arise at the end of the 1260-year rule of the beast from the sea, verse 12. In addition, in its final dragon-like stage, it is contemporary with the resurrected phase of the sea beast, verse 14. Thus, it must begin about 1798 and rule until Jesus' second coming. See Revelation chapter 19, verse 20. 2. Place of rise. The first beast of Revelation 13 and all the beasts mentioned in Daniel 7 arose from the sea, which according to Revelation 17:15 represents peoples and nations. In obvious contrast, the second beast mentioned in Revelation 13 comes up from the earth, a term used in chapter 12 to indicate a sparsely populated wilderness region. Verse 11, confer Revelation chapter 12, verse 16. The original Greek word used in verse 11 and translated coming up indicates that John saw this power springing up like a plant. Only one nation, or power, fits these first 2 specifications, the United States of America. It alone, of all the major world powers, emerged in the late 1700s in a wilderness area. 3. Influence. The animal from the earth exercises a worldwide influence. The whole world follows this example. See verses 12, 16, and 17. Again, the specification fits the United States. 4. Apparent nature. Throughout the book of Revelation, the figure of the Lamb represents Jesus Christ. The Lamb is an innocent, peaceful animal, a sharp contrast to the beasts that represent the powers used by Satan. The animal from the earth, strangely, has 2 horns like a lamb. It appears on first sight to be lamb-like, innocent, even Christian in appearance. Those who founded the United States based the nation's constitution on 2 great principles, civil and religious liberty. These 2 principles are inseparably connected with the Republican form of government, which allows the people to rule through their chosen representatives, and the Protestant understanding of the principle of religious liberty. According to John's prophecy, the United States is to play a central role in Satan's final attempt to destroy God's people and so thwart his eternal purpose. To do this, it must undergo a change, a remarkable change. Notice what will happen to the United States. 1. It will speak as a dragon, verse 11. A country speaks or expresses itself through legislative processes. This prophecy predicts that America will enact some law which will support the resurrected first beast, the papacy, and in so doing it will manifest the very spirit of Satan, the dragon. 2. Through actual persecution it will require all men in some manner to worship or pay homage to the Roman Catholic Church state. Verse 12. Confer verses 2 and 5. 3. It will deceive the inhabitants of the earth through miracles, as it tries to get them to make an image to the beast. Verses 13 and 14. Confer Revelation chapter 16 verse 13 and 14, Matthew 24 verse 24, 1 Timothy chapter 4 verse 1. Thus America will become the focal point of a great counterfeit religious revival in which spiritualism is to play a prominent role. 4. It will create an image of the beast. Verse 15. 2 powers combine to form the original beast, the Republic of Rome and the apostate early Christian church. The first beast arose as a union of church and state. In like manner, when the religious bodies of America joined forces to secure government support to enforce their beliefs, The Republic of the United States will thereby create an image of the original beast. 5. It will create this image through legislation, causing all men to worship the beast through homage to its religious teachings. Verse 15. Ultimately, this oppressive legislation will involve a death penalty for dissenters. 6. It will use economic pressures to force men to identify themselves with the mark of the beast, either by their actions in their right hand or by actual mental assent in their foreheads. The book of Revelation presents several points that identify this important mark and its nature. First, it will involve worship. Those who receive it worship the beast. Verse 8, confer Revelation chapter 14, verse 9. Second, it is something upon which nearly all professed Christians, Catholics and Protestants alike, will agree. Third, those who receive it are contrasted in Revelation 14, verses 9 through 12 with those who keep the commandments of God. Thus the mark involves an attempt to disregard God's law. Long ago, the prophet Daniel declared that the little horn, the same power as the beast from the sea described in Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 10, would think to change times and laws. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. In particular, the apostate Roman papacy has thought to change the fourth commandment of God's law by substituting worship on the first day of the week, Sunday, for God's appointed day of worship, the seventh-day Sabbath. Moreover, it presents this change as a mark of its ecclesiastical authority. Numerous Catholic catechisms recognize this fact. For instance, Peter Gearman's The Converse Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, 1957 edition says, Question, which is the Sabbath day? Answer, Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. The only religion that leads to God is that which comes from God. He alone is the source of truth and light and righteousness. That religion which springs forth from the mind of fallen man is sin. It is the very essence of the man of sin to place himself above God, to exalt the creature over the Creator, to attempt to improve the law of self-sacrificing love that represents the character of God. And so the mark of the beast is a creation of man, the man of sin. When Sunday observance is enforced by law, then the issues will be clearly drawn between the religion of God and that which comes from man. Only then, with the issues thus clearly drawn, will Sunday observance become the mark of the beast. Those who then accept this mark will also accept the name or character of the beast and the number of a man. This number, 666, is eminently man's number. 6 falls short of 7, the number of completeness and perfection. While the seventh-day Sabbath is God's own sign of his completed work, the number 6 represents that which falls short. Only those who accept God's seal, the Sabbath, the sign of his authority as creator and rightful sovereign of earth, and who trust fully in the perfect righteousness of Jesus Christ will escape the great delusion connected with the mark of the beast. Revelation 12 and 13 presents Satan on the offensive, deceiving all mankind and gathering his forces for the great final battle between himself and Christ. Through the false lamb, Revelation chapter 13 verses 11 through 18, Satan will bring about his supreme deception as he exalts the religion arising from the creature over that which comes from God. In summary, thus it is evident that God knows the future. The events of this chapter were all future in John's day. The early church of which John was a member experienced the ire of the dragon as it was manifested against God and his people. Through the telescopic eye of prophecy, John saw the change from the dragon to the leopard beast. This was another attempt on the part of Satan to enslave men with his blasphemous doctrines. This leopard beast was a revival of the great red dragon, but in a different garb. In the name of Christianity, the devil carried on his nefarious work for 1260 years. The existence of God's church was threatened, but God's eye was upon his persecuted people, and he miraculously provided protection. Despite the long period of supremacy, Satan lost out at the end. John was shown a deadly wound inflicted, and he who had been so powerful was led into captivity. The next picture shows the devil in his conflict against Christ changing his tactics. But beneath it all, he is the same devil at work seeking to ensnare and destroy God's saints. The conflict did not end in 1798. God says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. The last conflict will be the worst. God's name, his power, the law of God, the principles of God's government will be the pivotal point of Satan's attacks. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. The decree that will finally go forth against the remnant people of God will be very similar to that issued by Ahasuerus against the Jews. Today, the enemies of the true church see in the little company keeping the Sabbath commandment a Mordecai at the gate. The reverence of God's people for his law is a constant rebuke to those who have cast off the fear of the Lord and are trampling on his Sabbath. Satan will arouse indignation against the minority who refuse to accept popular customs and traditions. Men of position and reputation will join with the lawless and the vile to take counsel against the people of God. Wealth, genius, education will combine to cover them with contempt. Persecuting rulers, ministers, and church members will conspire against them. With voice and pen, by boast, threats, ridicule, they will seek to overthrow their faith. By false representations and angry appeals, men will stir up the passions of the people. Not having a thus saith the scriptures to bring against the advocates of the Bible Sabbath, they will resort to oppressive enactments to supply the lack. To secure popularity and patronage, legislators will yield to the demand for Sunday laws. But those who fear God cannot accept an institution that violates a precept of the Decalogue. On this battlefield will be fought the last great conflict in the controversy between truth and error, and we are not left in doubt as to the issue. Today, as in the days of Esther and Mordecai, the Lord will vindicate his truth and his people. Prophets and Kings, pages 604, 605. There is nothing more important than truth. Jesus not only declared that he was the truth, John chapter 14, verse 6, but when he prayed for his people, he said, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. John chapter 17, verse 17. A person's responsibility to truth is threefold. He must love the truth. He must believe the truth. He must keep the truth. Paul mentions three reasons why people will be deceived in earth's last hour. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 8 through 12. First, because they receive not the love of the truth. Second, they believe not the truth. And third, they had pleasure in unrighteousness. This means that many willfully go contrary to truth. Keeping truth has always been a test of discipleship. Jesus' words to Philip and the rest of the disciples are full of meaning. If ye love me, keep my commandments. John chapter 14, verse 15. Only those who have been diligent students of the scriptures and who have received the love of the truth will be shielded from the powerful delusion that takes the world captive. The Triumph of God's Love, page 367.